Hi everyone. Thanks for coming today. I have the next lesson lined up, and this is continuing on for exercise 2G, which is about compound interest. In the part 1 video, we covered the compound interest formula, and we also have this section where we use the interest to find the amount of interest that you have, and that will be A minus P. We also labeled this equation here. However, today we're actually going to develop this a bit further, and we're going to actually add on to this because now we have to worry about our compounding periods. This is actually going to affect the overall amounts. So what we need to do is we need to add on to this formula a bit. So I'd like you to turn to page 1. And I want you to add on to these notes here. And what you're going to do is you're going to go R divided by C. And at the top here, N is going to basically turn into your time times the amount of times you compound. And this is how we actually calculated this value. It's still your N, except this time we're going to use a bit more ideas to calculate it. So I guess you can still put it as an N there. Okay, so I guess we'll leave that as an N for now. We'll see how it plays out later down the track when we start these questions. Yesterday we completed example 19, or in our previous video we completed example 19. We're going to complete example 20 now. So in example 20, we have the question, and it's asking us to convert rates and time periods. Now it says here, calculate the number of periods and the rates of interest offered per period for each of the following. So here we're not actually asking to calculate the amounts. We're not asking, it's not asking to calculate the interest. It just wants to find the number of periods and also the interest rate offered in this period here. Okay, so you can see here that each of these questions are worth 2 marks. It's quite straightforward. So if we're looking for the number of periods, we need to actually see how long we're paying out for and how often it's getting paid out every year. So let's have a look at the number of periods first. So for part A, we're going to write down number of periods. That's the first thing we're going to calculate. And you can see here that this is the section that we want to focus on because it says 4 years paid monthly. Now in the previous video, we did focus on this section here. And here in this section, it said 4 years compounded annually. So what this means is that annually means once every year, and we're compounding it for 4 years. So the total number of payments that you have is 1 times 4, which is equal to 4. So we're actually going to write this again. This little phrase here really helps us understand how many periods we actually have altogether. So instead of writing the whole phrase number of periods, we know that to be N. Okay, so we're going to say N equals 2. Now it says here, 4 years paid monthly. So how many times does this idea of monthly mean if you're thinking about it in one entire year? If you're getting paid monthly, there's 12 months in 1 year. So that means you're going to get compounded, or you're going to get paid 12 times a year for 4 years. So what this means is we need to go, okay, We've got 12. If we want to find out how many pay periods we have, we're going to go 12 times 4, which means that we have 48 payments across the 4 years, a total of 48 payments. So why is this number here important? This number here is important because we need to actually go up here to our formula, and we're going to replace this now with a 48, okay? If we were to use that equation. The second thing that we have to worry about as well is this idea of the rate of interest offered within the period. So it says here 6% per annum. However, we're getting paid monthly. So per annum means, let's have a look at this. Rate of interest. Now, in this particular question, we're actually focusing on monthly, on the word here of monthly. So I'd like you to write this down as well. Now, what this means is in our little section for our equation, you can see it's R over C. This is the part that we're calculating if we're trying to do that little section. So all we have to do is calculate R over C. Because what we're doing is we're taking 6% per annum. So that's 6% every year. But we're splitting it into 12 payments. So what this means is if we go 6 over 12, we get 0.5%. It's not about every year anymore. We're looking at the idea of monthly. So we're going to say per month. These two numbers are really important. So that's what we're going to use. I'll do the same thing for part B. And see here again, if we want to calculate the number of periods, we'll just duplicate here. We need the other idea of how long it is and how often it's going to be paid out. So we know that N, this idea of quarterly. When you hear the word quarter, we think of 4, okay? So this means that every year we're going to get paid 4 times a year for 3 years this time, because we're looking at question part B. Okay, so we're going to go 4 times a year for 3 years. What this means is, in total, we'll get paid 12 times. Now, this idea of the rate of interest, currently you can see it's 18% every year. But now I'm going to ask you, how many times are we going to split that percentage throughout the year into this idea of quarterly? We follow the equation, R divided by C. Our R, or our rate, I'll just choose a different color here, is 18%. And this idea of quarterly here means 4, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to go 18 divided by 4. What this gives us, and we can go to the calculator here, any calculator, you got 18 divided by 4. You can either press Control Enter, or you can find this approximately equal sign. you can see equals to 4.5. So what this means is we have 4.5% per quarter. Okay, so 18% if it's every year, but if we're breaking it down to per quarter, it's only 4.5% per quarter. Same amount, it's just a different time period. So what I'd like you to do is now pause the video. I'd like you to write down these notes. And I'd like you to go down here and try. Keep an eye on the notes as well. So if your teacher can pause, or if you can pause the video now, give yourself 3 minutes. Maybe try both of them. Write as much as you can, write as quickly as you can. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, hopefully now you've tried the questions. I'll go through these sections again. We're looking at part A for this section of Now You Try. It's asking us for the number of periods. So if we're looking at the number of periods, we want to focus on this idea of 2 years paid monthly. Now, if we were to break this down a bit further again, we want to go through and underline each part. So this 3% per annum here is the rate. That's our R. The 2 years here is our time. And our monthly here, I'm going to introduce that as C. Okay, the C stands for compounding. So how often does it compound? Compound means add on or snowball. If it's compounding monthly, then we convert it. We ask ourselves, okay, how many months in 1 year? That is 12. Okay, so now we have all of our ingredients. I'll make this simple. N is equal to T times C. Okay, that's the same as saying 2 years, and for every year, we're going to have 12 payments per year. Or every year. So that's the same as just saying 2 times 12. So the total number of payments you'll have in a year is 24. And that was telling us the number of periods. Oops, we're not going to go to part B just yet because we've still got one more piece. It's also asking us for the rate of interest offered in the period. In this case here, it's asking us the period is monthly. So I'm just going to write here, we have the formula. The pay period is going to be R over C. So we take our rate at the top here, that's our rate, 3% per annum. And our C, or our compounding period, is 12. So we're going to write 3 divided by 12. Put that in your calculator. 3 divided by 12. Press Control Enter or find, see if you can get it into a decimal place. That's equal to 0.25%. Per, it's not per annum anymore. It's now per month. I'll go on to part B. Again, we want to annotate this. We have our 7% per annum, which is our R. Our 4 years, which is our T. And this idea of biannually, which means twice yearly. So C in this case is equal to 2. Okay, so we got to interpret what that word means and see if we can change it to a number. We're going to have a look at the number of periods now. And again, let's just follow the formula. The number of years multiplied by how many times you compound in a year. So T, let's just write this down. I'll write N equals first because that's what we're trying to find out. We're trying to find out N. We have our T, which is 4, and our C, which is 2. So all we need to do is go 4 times 2, and that's equal to 8. So this means that if you get paid 4 years, and you get paid twice a year, that means you get paid a total of 8 times across the entire, let's say, investment. So across the entire investment, you'll get paid 8 times. Last thing we're going to find is the rate of interest. But we're not going to find the rate of interest monthly anymore. We just want to look at it biannually. This word bi means twice. Annually means yearly. So you can write the word biannually because it's more of a technical word. We'll practice using technical words. Again, the formula is as follows. We still use R divided by C. We've got our ingredients here for part B. That's 7 over 2. And if you put that into your calculator, most of you might know it's 3.5, but practice using your calculator because you have it there. So this is 3.5%, but it's not per year anymore. It's per, or you can just say 3.5% biannually, or per half year. So all these notes here will be on Compass. Let's give it a try, have a look at it. If I was to go back up here, I would add in the equation of N equals T times C. N equals T times C. It's the same if you switch around and you go C times T. Same. Okay. So pause the video before we move on to the next section. Or you can check on Compass. I'm going to move on to question 21 now. And this question here is actually using the idea of compounded using months, right? So we can go back up to our equation at the top here. You notice that we've already updated this little R divided by C section. But remember how we said N? We said that N is equal to T times C. So we can actually write T and multiply it by C. Now, C is the compounding periods. Which means how many times, this is on page 1, you compound in a year. The T here represents, I'll just do it in a different color again. The T here represents the time. Remember, the time is always in years. Okay, so maybe let's try to use this now. It's a more, it's just got a little bit more added on, but it's got more information. Okay. So I'm just going to write this little formula out on the side here. A is equal to P, bracket 1 plus R divided by C over 100 to the power of T times our C. Now, when we go to type this in our calculator, it might look really messy, but this is important to know actually what to type into the calculator. And I'll show you what buttons to press as well, so you can give it a try. Okay. But first of all, let's go through and actually have a look at this question here. It says Tony's investment of $4,000. So we recognize here, Tony puts in $4,000. So what this means is that the $4,000 is our principal. So I want you to underline and I want you to label at the top. Is compounded, okay, is compounded at 8% per annum over 5 years. Let's just stop there for a second. There's a lot of information here besides the principal. It also says compounded. So this idea of compounded, we have to focus on this formula, okay? If it was simple interest, then we would have used the other formula, I equals PRT. But it's important that we know that it's compounded instead. We have a look at here at 8.4% per annum. That's going to be our rate. And we have this idea of 5 years, which is our T. Okay, we've got P, we've got R, we've got T. We've got most of our ingredients here. It says here, determine the amount. This is what we're trying to find. It says determine. So we're trying to find the amount. The amount here is capital A. And you can see that's what we're trying to find. Determine the amount he will have after 5 years if the interest is paid monthly. So the key word in this section here is not 5 years, because we've already have the idea of 5 years here. We don't need to write it again, right? Notice if I do underline it, it's in the same colors because it's just repeating. Now it says here, if the interest is paid monthly, the key word here is monthly. The word monthly here represents our C, which is how many compounding periods we have a year. So if you're getting paid monthly, then that means you're going to have 12 payments in the year. So let's just double check what we have. Let's look at the letters that we already have. And let's compare this to this formula here. And we'll just go through and see if we can tick it off. So we're looking for our A, and that's what we're looking for. So we don't know what A is, we can't replace that. I'm looking at my P here. Well, that's 4,000, isn't it? So you can see here we've got 4,000 there already. Just take this a bit down further. We see 1 plus, they're just numbers. We're looking for our R now. You can see it's 8.4. So we're going to take 8.4 and put that in. We're going to substitute it later. We also see the letter C here, which is 12. And then we also see T, which is 5. And once again, we've got our C, which is 12. So we need to put all of these numbers into where these letters are. Okay, except for the A, because we're still trying to find the A. Okay. In terms of the 100, we just type everything in afterwards. Okay, so we can see here that we're trying to find A. So we're going to follow the structure again now. We're going to start with the formula, and this was already said in the previous video. We have the formula first. Which is A equals, and don't be afraid to write it again. The more you write it, the more you'll remember it. And you'll be able to recognize it as well. So this is a compound interest formula. In our next step, we substitute. So you've got A. We change the P to a 4,000. And I'm just looking at this section here, because we already have it there. 1 plus, instead of writing the R, I've got 8.4 over, or forward slash C, which is 12, all over 100. Close this bracket, and in the power here, we have 5 times 12. So what does this look like when we go to type this in a calculator? So if you go to your calculator, and if you just got a normal scientific calculator, we would type in 4,000 times. I want you to open a bracket. So this is where we're up to right now. We're going to write 1 plus, 1 plus. Now this part here is kind of tricky, right? Because we need to write out this fraction, but there's a fraction in a fraction. So the way we type this is we're going to type the top part first. We just need to add in a pair of brackets here. Okay, so we're going to type bracket 8.4 forward slash 12 or divided by 12. Okay, so if you're on a normal calculator and you've only got the division sign, you're going to write divided by 12, like so. And then we've closed off the bracket, but now we have to divide again by 100. Okay, so we're going to type divided by 100. So that's done. The 100 is done. Then we've got to close the bracket. You can see here we've got two sets of bracket, one on the outside, one on the inside. So I'll make the outside ones a bit more thick so you can see that it's compared down to what you type in your calculator. The next part here is we're going to put a hat, or sometimes you might see it as x to the power of y, or you might see it as x with a box next to it. This means the power of. Now, this 5 times 12 here both sits in that bracket there. So again, we're going to just actually put a pair of brackets around there and just go 5 times 12. Sorry, I'll change the color. If you type this whole line into your calculator, it's exactly the same as this here. Okay? So I'll show you in both ways. And then we'll write out our answer. So if I had the CAS calculator, I would have typed 4,000 times open bracket 1 plus, and on the CAS calculator you can actually type in fractions, but in the case that you can't, that's okay. There's other ways around it. So notice I'm typing it exactly as I want it to. 5 times 12. I'm just going to go Control Enter here. So that's what it looks like, right? But what happens if you don't know how to type that out? Let's try with the other way, the longer way. Times the bracket. We've got 1 plus. We open the bracket, we go 8.4 divided by 12. Close that bracket, divided by 100 now. Close that bracket. I'm going to raise it to the power of 5 times 12. Again, now if I press Control Enter, notice there, they end up being the same answer, or it comes out, it reads it, and it realizes that it's the same format. So we get our answer as $6,078.95 because we round up. $6,078.95. Okay. So the nearest dollar, this is how much is going to be in your account now if you compound it for 5 years. Okay, so you put in $4,000. After 5 years, it's going to turn into this amount. So you've made a lot more money. I'll just label here. This is the final part. That's your answer. So formula, substitute, answer, step by step. So I'd like you to pause the video now and give that section a try. Again, the answers will be on Compass, just so you can try it out. I think the hardest part here, hands down, would be what to type into the calculator. If you have a basic calculator, you need to type this in carefully. If you're still having trouble with this, don't be afraid to approach me when I'm back on site or when I'm back at school, or if you see me around. Ask me how you can type that in using your calculator. Okay, and this is going to be important, right? You want to know how to use your calculator. And it's not just about borrowing anyone's calculator to use. You want to use the right one, okay? So pause the video, give this section a try. I'll just remind you here that this is also worth just 2 marks as well. Hopefully you've had a chance to try this now. I'll go through this question. So here we have Sally's investment, $6,000. It's compounded at 4% per annum over 4 years. Determine the amount she will receive after 4 years if the interest is paid monthly. Okay, so we're going to go through again. $6,000 is our principal amount. 4.8% per annum is our rate. 4 years is our time. It says determine the amount. So if it's determined, we're trying to find it. So we actually don't know what our amount is. After the 4 years, notice I'm just going to use the blue again. Oh, sorry, not the blue this time. I'm going to use the green because that's the same information. Yeah. And it says if the interest is paid monthly. So monthly is the key word here. This means that our C value, that's our C, which is how many times it compounds in 1 year. If it's monthly, it'll be 12 times a year. So we've missed one word, and it's towards the beginning. It's the word compounded. So the word compounded brings us to this equation that we need to write out every single time. A equals P, because this is a compound interest formula. And notice here we're going to use the divided by C up there. Over 100 to the power of T times C. We're going to replace the letters now with the numbers. In other words, we're going to substitute. So I've got 6,000 bracket 1 plus, our R is 4.8 slash our C, which is 12. Got to divide that by 100. So notice there, this section here, divided by 100. Close the bracket. And we're going to put it to the power of t, which is 4, times c, which is 12. So it's going to be to the power of 4 times 12. Our last part now is to type it into our calculator before you get your answer. Okay. So this is the bonus of having the CAS calculator. Once you get used to it, you'll know exactly what to type in. And if you decide to continue with general maths in year 11, then it's really worthwhile getting one now so that you know how to use it next year. Okay? You'll start to use it a lot in year 11 general maths. So you may as well take it now or get one now and be prepared for next year. Okay, so I'm just going to go type this now into the CAS calculator. 6,000 plus times 1 plus 4.8 over 12 divided by 100. I've got a 4 times 12 here on the outside. Let's see if I can remember that. So I've got 6,000 times 1 plus, as a fraction, 4.8 divided by 12 over 100. Close that bracket, raise it to the power of 4 times 12, and don't forget to make it decimals by pressing Control Enter. So answer here is 7,267.24. That 3 turns into a 4 because we round up. 7,267.24. And this is dollars. Okay, that's it. You don't have to write this down, but you can see we've got the formula. We substitute, and then we write our answer. Remember, when we talk about money, you got to put the symbol at the front, and you need to write it to 2 decimal places. 2 decimal places if you want to get the mark. So where do the marks go? 1 for this section here, 1 mark, and 1 mark for the answer. Why will I say 1 mark for both of these lines here? Again, it's not about how many marks, does not tell you how many lines you should write. How many marks, if it's just worth 1 mark, it does not mean that you just write 1 line. You can write 3 lines if you wanted to, all right? It's what's helpful. So we're not focusing on marks, we're focusing on what the process is, because this is actually helpful. Okay. So this concludes the video here. I want you to try out the questions now. They're on Compass. You can just go onto the lesson plan and you'll know which questions to do. Make sure you get your practice in. If you do more questions, you'll be more prepared. So good luck. Bye for now.